Good morning. Good morning, everyone. A special welcome to any who are new or newish to the Sangha this morning. So we've been discussing the Lotus Sutra, the Dharma Flower Sutra, and it's a work that is complex, subject to many interpretations. So I'm offering some perspectives on it without any pretense of explaining it. And the chapter I'm going to be talking about today is entitled Safe and Easy Practices, sometimes translated Comfortable Conduct or Peaceful and Agreeable Practices. So it sounds pretty inviting, this chapter. But when I first reviewed it with the thought of talking about it, I was so baffled by it that I was tempted to skip over and go to the next chapter, which will, I think, be easier to discuss. But the more I went over it, the more I gained appreciation for it, and we'll talk about it today. So the narrative in this is that Manjushri is asking a question of the Buddha. And the question he has is, how does one teach this sutra in an evil age? How does one teach this sutra in an evil age? The concept of an evil age has been mentioned in other chapters as well. The idea being that at some point, the teachings of the Buddha will become so diluted out over time after the Buddha's death that they are no longer, that you can't really teach them anymore. So, and that, people just won't listen, people won't understand. So he's asking the question of what do we do? How do we handle this situation? The concept of an evil age, by the way, it's not unique to Eastern philosophy and religions. It seems like thoughtful people in all traditions have had the notion that they were in some measure living in an evil age, an age when things fall apart. The center cannot hold, as Yeats put it. And I suspect when the authors of this chapter were talking about the evil age, they had some thought of their own age being degraded or decadent in some way. But in any case, that's the question that Manjushri is raising. And one reason this chapter, I think, is baffling is that sometimes it seems to be addressing concerns that would be of monastics alone. And other times it seems to address concerns more generally that would include lay people. And some of the notions do seem outdated in a way. But anyway, let's get into it and see where it goes. So I'll just read a few selections from this chapter. And this is from Jean Reeves' translation, the Lotus Sutra, maybe backwards I can't tell what it looks like on your screen. At that time, Manjushri bodhisattva, the Great One, Prince of the Dharma, said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, rare indeed are such bodhisattvas. Respectfully obeying the Buddha, they have made great vows that in the evil age to come, they will defend, embrace, read, recite, and teach the Dharma Flower Sutra. World-honored one, how will these bodhisattvas, the great ones, be able to teach this sutra in the evil age to come?" Again, we're still talking about the Dharma or the Lotus Sutra in third person here within the Lotus Sutra. So that's a self-reflective aspect of this text that sort of carries through. The Buddha responded to Manjushri, "If any bodhisattvas, great ones, want to teach this sutra in the evil age to come, they should dwell at peace in 4 teachings." So up to this point, then, you're anticipating that there are going to be 4 distinct teachings that are offered by the Buddha. It's hard to discern those. They seem to overlap and run into each other as you read the chapter, at least at first. Donald Lopez, a Buddhist or a scholar and translator of Buddhist literature, aligns these 4 teachings with 4 aspects that were common in Chinese culture, and also in Buddhism: body, speech, mind, and vow, or body, speech, thought, and intention, and divides them up that way. And they do seem to fall into place. So we'll get into the first one. First, they should dwell at peace in bodhisattva practices and associations. Practices and associations. So they will be able to preach this sutra to living beings. Manjushri, what do I mean by the practices of bodhisattva great ones? If a bodhisattva great one is always patient, is gentle and agreeable, is never violent, and never gets alarmed, and if, moreover, such a bodhisattva does not act in such a way as to become attached to anything, but perceives the nature of the reality of all things, not acting, not discriminating, this is what I shall call the practices of bodhisattva great ones. And then he goes on to talk about associations, which I think are, in other words, the people you hang out with. And I'll skip ahead and read the verse version of that. The Lotus Sutra is divided into prose sections and verse sections, which supposedly mirror each other, but sometimes are somewhat different. If there are bodhisattvas in the evil age to come, who with fearless hearts want to teach this sutra, these are the practices and associations they should enter. Kings and princes, ministers and office heads, those involved in dangerous sports, Khandala people, by that he means the lower caste or the untouchable caste, non-Buddhists and Brahmins should always be avoided. Also, extremely arrogant people who are attached to a small vehicle and like to study its 3 collections. He's talking about the early Buddhist teachings, the early Pali collections. Should not be associated with. Don't associate with them either. Should not, nor should one associate with monks who fail to observe precepts, arhats in name only, with nuns who like to laugh and play, especially avoid nuns who like to laugh and play, or with lay women deeply attached to the 5 desires, or seeking a way to extinction in the present, One should not associate with any of them. But if such people do come to a bodhisattva with sincere intentions to hear about the Buddha way, then a bodhisattva without fear and expecting nothing in return can teach the Dharma for them. So this section confused me because there's up till this point in the Lotus Sutra, it's been very inclusive. That all beings are destined to become Buddhas. And it's very inviting for anyone who walks in the door. But this little section would suggest that you should avoid certain people. And this may be addressed mostly to monastics, where associations with some people would be unseemly or appear inappropriate at the time. You can take that as you will. So he's talking about, in that sense, bodily actions, how you move in the world, who you associate with. And then we get into the section where the Buddha seems to be talking about speech, how you talk. Further, Manjushri, after the extinction of the Tathagata, after my death, during the time of the decline of the Dharma, those who want to teach this sutra should make these safe and easy practices part of their lives. When they preach or read a sutra orally, they should take no pleasure in telling of the errors of other people or sutras, nor should they have contempt for other Dharma teachers, or speak of the likes and dislikes, or strong and weak points of other people. Bodhisattvas always delight in teaching the Dharma in a peaceful, comforting way. They teach the fine and wonderful meaning of the Dharma with a peaceful face. So I think as we go through this, it becomes clear that he's not only talking about teaching the Dharma as a didactic exploration of a certain text, but he's talking about teaching the Dharma in our lives, how we interact in the world, how we comport ourselves in the world, which is probably the most effective way of teaching the Dharma. So he's not talking about teaching this sutra in a very narrow sense. He's talking about a very general discussion of how one comports oneself with others. And talks in this section about teach the fine and wonderful meaning of the Dharma with a peaceful face. Occasionally, I sort of scan the FM dial and hear a different. Well, if you've ever done this in your car and you've deviated from the station you usually listen to, you realize that about half of the stations are radio preachers, and I would say the majority of them are sort of fear-based preachers. They basically seem to be intent on arousing fear and perhaps righteous anger. But some of them are sort of compassion-based or love-based preachers who seem to be trying to inspire their listeners to bring them to a higher aspiration. And anyway, that seems to be the tone that the Buddha is recommending. After my extinction, if there are monks who are able to preach this wonderful Dharma Flower Sutra, they will be free from jealousy and anger, from distress and obstacles. People will not abuse them. They will be free from fear, neither attacked with swords and sticks nor driven away. And then we get into the thought or the mind portion of the teaching. If you would teach this sutra, you should get rid of jealousy and anger, arrogance, deceit, and dishonesty, and always do what is honest and right. You should have contempt for no one, nor quibble about the teachings, nor cause others to have doubt or regret by saying, "You will never become a Buddha." A child of the Buddha teaching the Dharma will always be gentle and patient and compassionate toward all, never become negligent. Toward the great bodhisattvas in all directions who practice the way out of sympathy for all, one should have reverence and respect, saying, "These are my great teachers." One should think of world-honored Buddhas as unexcelled fathers, ridding oneself of arrogance. One should teach the Dharma without obstacle. Such is the third teaching. The wise should keep and observe it. Such a wholehearted, safe, and easy practice will be honored by countless multitudes of people. And then there is the vow element, finally, or the intention element. Manjushri at the end of the age, when the Dharma is about to die. This is the evil age we've been referring to. Bodhisattva great ones who receive and embrace this Dharma Flower Sutra should have a spirit of great kindness toward lay people and monastics, and a spirit of great compassion toward those who are not yet bodhisattvas. They should think, such people have missed the Tathagata's preaching of the Dharma by skillful means, according to what is appropriate. They have not heard or known or realized or inquired or believed or understood. Yet, though they have not inquired about, believed in, or understood this sutra, when I have attained supreme awakening, they say to themselves, wherever I am, using divine powers and the powers of wisdom, I will lead them to take the Dharma into their lives. Manjushri, this Dharma Flower Sutra is the greatest teaching of the Tathagatas and the most profound of them all. I give it to you last, just as that powerful king in the end gives the bright jewel he has guarded for so long. And that refers to a analogy that the Buddha makes between the king who offers a precious jewel from his top knot to the general who has served him well. The Buddha, in this case, is offering the jewel of wisdom to his bodhisattvas. So this chapter, in an odd kind of way, seems to be talking about the Buddha's recommendations for how we comport ourselves in the world, and not narrowly about how we teach the Lotus Sutra, which, being halfway through the Lotus Sutra now, we're still talking about as in the third person. But I think it brings up some questions in my mind. One is, the question about sincerity or authenticness, authenticity. It seems like there's the risk, and I believe I've observed this, perhaps in myself and others, of thinking, well, I'm identifying myself as a Buddhist, or at least I'm studying the Buddhist teachings. I ought to be serene and gentle and kind, unflappable, equanimous. I should have all these traits. And sometimes that can lead to a situation where one might be, in a sense, seething inside, but trying to look peaceful on the outside, which I think is always transparent. So if these traits are desirable, the traits of being nonviolent, peaceful, gentle, compassionate, can we really cultivate them? Can we learn them? And, as I was taking a walk this morning, and there was a woman walking the other direction on the sidewalk, a very slight woman who probably weighed about twice as much as her beagle dog, and the dog was kind of pulling her along. And as I approached, the dog started barking wildly, and the woman was, yanking on the leash, trying to control the dog. And apologetically, she said, "He's beyond learning. I'm sorry." And I wonder if, in some sense, we're beyond learning. Can we really cultivate these traits? Another experience I had this week, though, I was driving a truck for the food pantry, and I made a right turn off of the St. Charles Rock Road, and right after that, somebody honked behind me, and I looked in my left side mirror, and there was somebody giving me the finger, and, driving a pickup truck. And I hadn't received that gesture recently. And all the other times I've received that gesture, I've had a response of anger, because it's sort of designed as a gesture of expressing and arousing anger. That's the point of the gesture. But this time I just had curiosity. Why is this guy upset, and what kind of day has he had up till now? I guess I attribute that in part to the practice that I do think, at least gradually, in my case, perhaps suddenly in some other people's case, there is learning possible, that these traits are cultivatable through immersing oneself in these teachings and a regular practice of meditation. Yes, I don't think we're beyond learning by any means. Although, what are the limits of that? We'll leave that for the discussions in the breakout rooms, I think. And so I guess this chapter comes down to several points. One is an advocacy for nonviolence, for peacefulness, for discernment about who we associate with. Not that we should reject or exclude people, but it does make a difference. If you're around people who share your desire for cultivation of these traits, then I think it's a lot easier to cultivate them yourself. The Buddha advocates maintaining a peaceful and gentle disposition as a way of, as the most effective way of teaching the Dharma. And the Buddha advocates being non-disparaging of others, cultivating humility, gratitude for those who have helped us along the way. And finally, compassion for the wayward, for the misguided, for the seriously deluded. And the little analogy that the Dharma Flower Sutra, what we're studying now, in one way or another, is the jewel from the Buddha's top note. I think we'll stop there, and I would be interested in your impressions about these thoughts, interpretations from this chapter. And I think I'll just leave it at that. And we'll go into breakout rooms. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening today.